Welcome to the 2017 Xtreme Dynasty League mock draft. Howie's Hustlers are now on the clock. Let's take a quick look at the draft order. You can see that Howie has the number 1 overall pick, but let's see how Howie acquired the 1-1 pick from Convicts last year during the first round of the draft. Howie gave up the 1-6 and 2-6 from 2016 for the Convicts 2016 2-2, the 2017 1-1, and Jason Pierre-Paul. Convicts then turned those 2 picks into CJ Prosise and Alex Collins. If we look at Howie's offensive roster, we see that he is set at quarterback with Rodgers, Simeon, and Winston. He also has good depth at wide receiver, especially after acquiring T.Y. Hilton and Marcus Peters from Blattercops for a 1-9 and 2-9. If you look at his running backs, there is a lot of potential on paper. C.J. Anderson could have a bounce-back season despite the addition of Jamal Charles and the presence of Devontae Booker. LeGarrette Blount should have a LeGarrette Blount season in Philadelphia, and you can still expect Frank Gore to put up decent numbers despite the fact that he is 100 years old. Eddie Lacy could have a huge year in that Seattle offense, and Paul Perkins is set to see a bigger role this year despite the addition of the 4th-round selection out of Clemson, Wayne Gallman. Owner Owen Howard has been actively pursuing a trade down from 1-1, and while it is still possible that we will see a trade happen before the draft starts, I think that Howie stays put and drafts running back Leonard Fournette from LSU to bolster his running backs. Fournette is a high-end talent with a rare blend of size, speed, and power. At 6 foot, 240 pounds, Mike Mayock said he is the angriest running back since Adrian Peterson. The Jaguars have good tailbacks, but this guy is a difference maker. The question on him is he in the game on 3rd down? I'm not quite sure why Howie would entertain trading out of the 1-1 with a talent like Fournette on the board. However, don't sleep on Howie throwing a curveball at 1-1 and drafting either Christian McCaffrey or Dalvin Cook since he's a Florida State fan. I don't know if we can expect Ezekiel Elliott numbers from last year for Fournette only because Jacksonville's offensive line has more question marks than Dallas's. Next up at 1-2, we have daddy issues with a pick he acquired from Gotham for Ben Roethlisberger. Everyone clearly expects owner Matt Ron to take a running back here. Now, if you look at his depth chart, you will see that wide receiver is a much bigger team need than running back, and I'll be the first to admit that I've been pounding the table for Matt to take Corey Davis at 1-2. However, I was wrong, and here's why. Matt has another pick at 1-4, and he only has Orton drafting between his 2 picks. Matt Ron should take a calculated risk here that Orton doesn't need a wide receiver and won't take Corey Davis at 1-3. Well, let's take a look at Orton's wide receivers. He has solid wide receivers in Kenny Britt, Josh Doctson, A.J. Green, Brandon LaFell, Rashard Matthews, and Mohamed Sanu. Also, if you consider that Orton has 2 Tennessee wide receivers, Matthews and Sharp, it wouldn't make much sense for him to draft a 3rd. Also consider that Orton has no depth at running back, so he has to go running back at 1-3, but we'll get to that in a second. That gives Matt Ron the opportunity to draft running back Christian McCaffrey at 1-2, 1 spot ahead at Orton, and then come back at 1-4 and get Corey Davis. Now, let's talk about Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey is the son of NFL great Ed McCaffrey. Christian was drafted 8th overall out of Stanford to the Carolina Panthers. Mike Mayock said, "I love his patience. He's not Le'Veon Bell, but his patience is like that. He's a 4-down player. I love LaShawn McCoy, and this guy's every bit as athletic." The knock on McCaffrey is that at 5'11", 202 pounds, he isn't big enough to be a bell cow running back, but he is essentially the same size as McCoy, and McCaffrey is extremely durable and can run between the tackles. He can carry the ball 20 times or catch it 10, so he has added value in PPR. He should immediately step in as the day 1 starter ahead of 30-year-old injury-prone Jonathan Stewart. With the 3rd pick, Kyle Orton's drinking buddy selects running back Dalvin Cook from Florida State. This pick destroys Howie, who was hoping Cook would still be there at 6. Orton was really hoping that McCaffrey would be here at 1-3 to handcuff to Stewart, but he'll be more than happy to pick up Dalvin to add to his weak running backs without a clear running back 1 amongst them. At 5'10", 210 pounds, Cook has some pretty big shoes to fill in Minnesota, but Mayock calls him a first-round talent who slipped into the 2nd round solely because of off-field issues. When you put his tape on, he's special. He'll make a difference in Minnesota. Cook has the ability to create for himself with elusiveness and speed. Despite the Vikings' offseason acquisition of Latavius Murray, Cook could be a Rookie of the Year candidate. Matt Ron's gamble pays off and is able to select wide receiver Corey Davis at 1-4. Looking at Ron's wide receivers, he really only has DeAndre Hopkins and Terrell Pryor, and Pryor has a new team, which always concerns me a little to see if he will be used the same way and still be as productive as he was before. It could be argued that Corey Davis is the number 1 overall rated player in this Dynasty draft, so for daddy issues to get him at 4, he is a good value. Davis was the 2016 Mid-American Offensive Player of the Year and is the all-time leader in major college football receiving yards with 5,285. He is an excellent route runner and tracks the deep ball as well as anyone. He dominates the red zone. All he does is catch touchdowns. Matt Ron has 2 more picks in the second round and should be looking at wide receivers there also. With the 5th pick, the Sandusky Victims selects running back Joe Mixon out of Oklahoma. Brandon Tubbs needs another strong running back. Right now he can start Jay Ajayi and LaShawn McCoy week 1, but after that RB3 is up for grabs. Bilal Powell and Rob Kelly are decent options, although Kelly's production hinges on Samaje Perine's role. It would also be nice to see Jamal Charles bounce back in Denver, and Shady isn't getting any younger. If you can get past the character issues and the fact that Mixon Ray-Riced some girl in the face, then you're getting a special football player. He has outstanding bursts to go from the first level to the third level and can be both elusive and can run through contact by dropping his pads and driving through tackles. He's an every down running back, but he's not going to create for himself like Fournette or Cook. He is also a strong PPR option. Howie's Hustlers are back on the clock once again for their second pick of 3 in the first round. This team doesn't have many team needs. Sometime in the course of this draft, they should address the defense by adding a defensive end, defensive tackle, linebacker, cornerback, and a safety, but it's too early for any of that here. With the selection of Fournette at 1-1, he is now pretty set at running back, but he could look to add another running back in a later round. For now, Mr. Howard will select O.J. Howard, tight end from Alabama, to pair with his current tight ends Coby Fleener and Travis Kelce. O.J. Howard is clearly the best player on the board here at 6 and also happens to fill a team need. Howard is an old-school combination tight end similar to Greg Olsen or Julius Thomas. His play speed is similar to a wide receiver and has an elite ceiling as a playmaker. Expect Tampa Bay to use a lot of 2 tight end sets featuring Cameron Brate and O.J. Howard. For the second straight year, Das Raderhawk takes a linebacker in the first round by selecting Jared Davis out of Florida. This may be a little high for Davis since his ADP is 210, but Das needs a linebacker and Davis is the best in the draft. Considering there are other teams with major linebacker needs, it makes sense to grab him at 1-7. Mike Mayock said, "He's got the physical traits. He's a tough kid. He's today's inside linebacker. He can run. He can stay in the game on third down, which I think is critical in Detroit. He is also a great football leader and won't have any problems taking charge of that defense. He should easily be the number 1 IDP linebacker of this rookie class." With the 8th pick, Ezekiel 25-17 selects wide receiver John Ross out of Washington. Ross blew up the combine when he ran a 4.2240, breaking Chris Johnson's record. If you could bottle pure speed, you'd have John Ross. Adoree Jackson has nightmares about this guy. He has some medical concerns with previous shoulder and knee injuries. He can sometimes struggle against press coverage, but he is just so explosive he can score from anywhere on the field with home run speed. At 1-9, Bladdercops is kind of a wild card. Owner Travis Yenny severely needs a running back. If you look at his depth chart, he doesn't really have a fantasy RB1, and his running back scored a combined 564 points, or an average of 113 last season. Booker is 3rd on the depth chart in Denver. Coleman is 2nd in Atlanta. Farrow is 3rd in LA. Rodgers is 3rd in Tampa Bay, but could get passed by 5th rounder Jeremy McNichols. Only Mike Gillislee is projected to be the starter in New England. The problem that Yenny faces is that the top-tier running backs, Fournette, McCaffrey, Cook, and Mixon, are all off the board, so he would need to look to the second tier, which has a lot of talent that is so close together it becomes a matter of personal preferences like Deontay Foreman, Wayne Gallman, Kareem Hunt, Alvin Kamara, Marlon Mack, Samaje Perine, and Jamal and Joe Williams. They all have their own pros and cons, but for the sake of this mock draft, I'm going to pencil Bladder in for Deontay Foreman, running back from Texas, staying at home with the Texans. This is about 10 spots ahead of his current ADP, but here's why it makes sense to take him now. Foreman is the 2016 Doak Walker Award winner for the nation's best running back for rushing for over 2,000 yards and 15 touchdowns. His only path to a starting job in the NFL is an injury-prone Lamar Miller. At 6 foot, 233 pounds, he is big, fast, and productive with outstanding quickness and wiggle for a back his size. Right now, his biggest weakness is pass protection and lack of third down value. Captain Reg is on the clock with the 10th pick in the first round. Owner Chris Sheridan didn't have a first-round pick last year, but in the past he is exclusively taking running backs in the first round. In 2014, he selected Carlos Hyde, and in 2015, he took Todd Gurley. He also added running back David Johnson in the second round that year, so he is okay at running back considering all three stay healthy. He needs to add a little depth. This is also somewhat of a wild card pick because as much as I'd like to think that Sheridan will stay true to form and draft another running back in the first round, his team needs would suggest that he needs to go wide receiver or linebacker. It's too early to take Reuben Foster here since Foster's ADP is 212, and especially if Sheridan is concerned about his shoulders. Wide receivers in this draft class are deep, but the talent drops off a cliff after Corey Davis and Mike Williams. Let's pause for a second here to look at why I have Mike Williams falling in this mock draft and why Reg shouldn't take him here. Mike Williams is currently suffering from a mild disc herniation, and the severity of the aforementioned injury is becoming increasingly ominous. He isn't scheduled to resume practicing until at least training camp at the earliest. Over the past 2 years, fellow first-round wide receivers Brashad Perryman, PCL, Josh Doctson, Achilles, and Kevin White, leg, have all missed extensive off-season time due to injuries, and none enjoyed productive rookie years, with the exception of Odell Beckham Jr. in 2014. For a team who needs a wide receiver to have a day-one impact, it can be tough to pull the trigger on Williams for both medical concerns and a crowded wide receiver depth chart for the Chargers. Back to Sheridan's pick. He has fantastic wide receivers on paper with Tavon Austin, Kelvin Benjamin, John Smokey Brown, Dez Bryant, Tyler Lockett, and Allen Robinson, but each of them failed to hit 200 points last season, and none of them lived up to their 2016 potential. Reg needs a wide receiver who can come in and be productive from day one, but he's not going to get him here. Reg stays true to his MO and drafts a running back at 110 with Kareem Hunt out of Toledo. Hunt was drafted in the third round by KC and joined Spencer Ware and Charkandrick West in the backfield. At 5'10", 216 pounds, and a 4.62 40, he's not going to win many races, but Daniel Jeremiah says the vision and balance that he has, I think he's one of the most instinctive players in the entire draft class. I think this guy is going to be an outstanding pro. I agree with Jeremiah. His balance and vision make up for the lack of blazing speed. Let's not pretend like 4.62 is not still fast. Chiefs running back coach Eric Bieniemy said, "He's a good kid and he's been working his tail off." He also went on to praise Hunt's work as a pass catcher, which should help Hunt score early playing time. Andy Reid has the Midas touch when it comes to versatile running backs. Hunt can immediately push Ware for the starting job, and at the very minimum is a better change of pace option than West. Ware signed a 2-year deal in 2017, but Hunt looks to be the future. 111. The Bulls are in the exact same boat as Blattercops. They desperately need help at running back. They were really hoping that Reg would go wide receiver and were extremely disappointed to see Hunt come off the board one pick ahead of them. The Bulls have one guaranteed starter in Le'Veon Bell, assuming that he doesn't get hurt, suspended, or hold out for more money. Ty Montgomery is a serviceable starter in a pinch, and Taylor Tubbs can start him week 1 if needed. Jeremy Hill finds himself in a not-so-favorable position after the Bengals drafted what appears to be his replacement in Joe Mixon, and Damian Williams is the number 2 behind Jay Ajayi. I expect D'Angelo Williams to get cut considering he is a free agent and has decided to pursue professional wrestling. The Bulls select running back Alvin Kamara from Tennessee. Many people don't love the landing spot for Kamara considering the Saints have both Mark Ingram and Adrian Peterson, but this is actually a very good landing spot for Kamara, and here's why. The Saints running backs have led the NFL in targets nearly every season under Sean Payton and Drew Brees. Look at what the Saints have done with Reggie Bush, Darren Sproles, and Pierre Thomas. The Saints traded up just to get Kamara, which tells me they have a plan for how to use him immediately. They will find a way to get him the ball, and he will be a great PPR option. Kamara is 5'10", 214 pounds, so he is the exact same size as Hunt, but just a tad faster with a 4.56 40. Kamara is able to create yardage with a burst of speed, wiggle, and power. He is decisive and twitchy with a strong lower body that provides superior balance. He's not an instinctive runner like Hunt, nor does he have the vision of Hunt, hence Hunt coming off the board first. But that doesn't discount how valuable Kamara is going to be. He's never been a 20 carry a game running back, but he could easily be a 10 catch a game running back. With the final pick in the first round acquired from the Crows for Blake Bortles, Howie's Hustlers selects wide receiver Mike Williams from Clemson. Owner Owen Howard loves the fact that a top 6 player and the second best wide receiver just fell into his lap at 12, and he can't turn in his draft card to the commissioner fast enough. We already have discussed the reason behind Williams' fall, but Howie doesn't need him to be productive day one. He can afford to be more patient because of his roster. Howie loves high-risk, high-reward players. At 6'4", 218 pounds, Williams is a steal at 12. Mayock says Williams is all about separating with length, power, and catch radius. He's a dominating physical presence. He's a back shoulder guy. You'll love him in the end zone. New owner Greg Kukier is now on the board with the first of his 2 picks. The first is a compensatory pick granted by the commissioner, and the second is his 2.1. Since this is Greg's first draft as an owner, there's no past information on his draft strategy, and the team has a ton of needs. Let's take a quick look at the full roster. He has 1 quarterback in Marcus Mariota, not much at running back, but a little potential with Derrick Henry and CJ Prosise. A few decent wide receivers in Doug Baldwin, Jeremy Maclin, and Sammy Watkins. A 35-year-old tight end in Jason Witten, and a 33-year-old kicker in Gostowski. One of the best fantasy defensive tackles around in Damon Snacks Harrison, and a good young defensive end in DeForest Buckner. Chandler Jones at linebacker, and prior to the draft, the Poor Bastards added linebacker Jatavis Brown through free agency to help out an anemic linebacker core. He also has safety Cam Chancellor and a couple other safeties with potential. With the compensatory selection, the Poor Bastards select running back Samaje Perine from Oklahoma. Perine could not have asked for a better landing spot than the Washington Redskins. The Redskins were ranked 29th in red zone efficiency in 2016, and Perine will help with that conversion rate. Perine only has to beat out undrafted free agent Rob Kelly to become the starting running back. Melvin Gordon once held a single-game rushing record when he broke LaDainian Tomlinson's record, only to see it fall 1 week later to Perine, who rushed for 427 yards and 5 touchdowns against Kansas. At 5'11", 233 pounds, Perine has the build to handle a heavy workload. He is all banger and no slash. Think Michael Turner for an NFL player comparison. With the first pick in the second round, the Poor Bastards select wide receiver Curtis Samuel from Ohio State. Samuel is fast. He ran a 4.31 40 at the Combine. After adding Christian McCaffrey in the first round, the Panthers come back in the second round and take Samuel. It is apparent that they are clearly trying to get faster on offense and have a plan on how to use McCaffrey and Samuel to create mismatches against opposing defenses. Samuel was mostly used as a running back in college, but will play wide receiver for Carolina. Think Tyreek Hill in Carolina's offense or a glorified Ted Ginn. The Panthers need weapons in that offense other than Cam, Kelvin, and Olsen. Samuel should be a PPR stud. By the way, I almost considered Zay Jones here, but decided against it considering that the Bastards already have Sammy Watkins in Buffalo, and they should be looking to diversify their bye weeks and not have 2 wide receivers competing for targets from the same quarterback. Juju Smith-Schuster was a consideration here also, but I like Samuel's upside better considering the depth chart in Pittsburgh and Samuel's PPR value. With the second pick in the second round and his third pick in the draft acquired via the trade with Gotham for Roethlisberger, owner Matt Ron selects wide receiver Zay Jones from East Carolina. After getting Corey Davis in the first, Ron needs to double down at wide receiver. Jones is the all-time FBS leader in receptions with 399 and also owns a single-season record with 158. He has very impressive hands and has the ability to win catches at the high point. Play speed is average, but he ran a 4.45 at the Combine, so he is fast. He should see a lot of production lined up across from Sammy and will inherit the Robert Woods target share with an opportunity for more. He could be the number one guy in Buffalo as early as 2018 if Sammy moves on. Next up is Kyle Orton's drinking buddies. Orton has a lot of team needs and should seriously consider picking up another running back at some point in this draft. One of Orton's biggest team needs is safety, considering he only has Adrian Amos, Tyrone Matthew, and Daniel Sorensen on his roster. Fabian selects safety Jamal Adams from LSU. Adams is the number one ranked safety in the draft and the 6th overall player taken in the NFL draft by the New York Jets. Orton will pair him with fellow LSU safety Tyrann Mathieu. Mike Mayock said, Jamal Adams is the safest pick in this draft. Adams is a physical tone setter with a sheriff's mentality. LSU has always produced top and secondary talent, and the people in the program think Adams is the best leader that LSU has had in years. Think Landon Collins in terms of rookie production and future ability. With the 4th pick in the 2nd round and his 4th pick in the draft, Daddy Issues selects tight end David Njoku from the U. Owner Matt Ron already has his running back in McCaffrey and 2 wide receivers in Corey Davis and Zay Jones. He could and should take more wide receivers, but he also is in need of a tight end, and it's hard to pass on the talent of Njoku here at 2-4 with a 112 ADP. Matt Ron only has Vernon Davis and Julius Thomas on his roster. Davis is stuck behind Jordan Reed, and Thomas is coming off a disappointing season in Jacksonville. Njoku is the next in a long line of Miami tight ends like Jeremy Shockey, Greg Olsen, Jimmy Graham, Kevin Everett, and Kellen Winslow II. Mike Mayock said, he's 20 years old, he's an ascending talent who can block in line. He doesn't even know how good he can be. All the talent in the world. He was drafted by the Browns, who traded back up into the 1st to draft him, and then they immediately cut Gary Barnidge, so Njoku has nothing standing in his way to make an immediate impact on offense and should provide a security blanket for whoever wins that starting quarterback job. He has incredible speed for a tight end and ran a 4.64 40 at the combine. He will be a nightmare matchup for linebackers around the league. He was also a National Boys High Jump champion in high school. Think Greg Olsen for an NFL comparison. With the 5th pick in the 2nd round, the Sandusky Victims take tight end Evan Ingram from Mississippi. Owner Brandon Tubbs is in the same boat as Daddy Issues, and after seeing Howard and Njoku both come off the board, he knows he needs to get his tight end now. His current tight ends include free agent Gary Barnidge, Cameron Brate, and Tyler Higbee. Sandusky needs a superstar tight end, and that is Ingram. Mike Mayock said he's a matchup nightmare. He can block on the perimeter. He'll be an immediate impact player. His skill set is closer to Mike Evans. He runs routes like a wide receiver. I don't care what you call him. Eli Manning is going to say, wow, I love this kid. Ingram ran a 4.42 40 at the combine, which is wide receiver speed. He will join a prolific passing offense that already has Odell Beckham Jr., Brandon Marshall, and Sterling Shepard. Howie is back on the clock for the 6th pick in the 2nd round and once again goes with a high-risk, high-reward player with the selection of linebacker Reuben Foster. Foster is a 6 foot, 229 pounds, and is an immediate impact player for a team in need of a linebacker, and Howie is in need of a linebacker. Foster looks like Luke Kuechly on tape. He is a sideline-to-sideline thumper and has the ability to cover routes which will keep him in the game on all 3 downs. So if he is such a super stud, why has he fallen to 2.6 and why is he a high-risk, high-reward player? There are medical concerns over his shoulders, and there were concerns that he would need a second surgery, but so far he seems to be progressing well. Howie's current linebackers include fellow 49er linebacker Navarro Bowman, who is 29 years old and is trying to return from his 2nd major injury in 3 years. He injured his Achilles in 2016, and it's been reported that he looks slow in coverage and couldn't keep up with blocking tight end Garrett Selleck. What shot does he stand against the running backs and tight ends in the league? Bowman is still a candidate to be cut by the 49ers before the season starts. Howie also has 35-year-old Dansby, 34-year-old Thomas Davis, a 30-year-old Sean Lee, and a 30-year-old free agent DeAndre Levy. Howie desperately needs to get younger at this position and knows that he has to take Foster at 2.6 because Foster won't make it past Doss at 2.7 or Reg at 2.10. Owner Justin Sanderson was 1 pick away from nabbing the top 2 linebackers in this draft class. Now he'll turn his attention to another defensive position and draft the number 1 overall selection in the 2017 NFL Draft in defensive end Myles Garrett from Texas A&M. Doss needs a defensive end, only having William Golston and Cameron Jordan on his roster. Das has been after an elite defensive end for seasons, and he finally gets his shot. Unfortunately, Garrett left the practice field on Wednesday with a foot injury, and it is suspected that it could be the ankle injury that plagued him most of last year. Luckily, that's just speculation, and he has plenty of time to get healthy, and the Browns think he's going to be okay. Ezekiel 2517 is on the board, and Caden Tubbs is going to keep the run on defensive picks going with safety Jabril Peppers from Michigan. Mike Mayock called him one of my favorite players in the draft. He brings explosive energy in the locker room. The question is his ball skills and ball production. I say forget about all of that. Have a plan for this kid. When people say it's a negative that they don't know how to play him, I see it as a positive. Peppers is a Swiss Army knife, and Ezekiel desperately needs a superstar safety and playmaker. The roster currently only consists of Mike Adams, Ricardo Allen, Eric Reed, and Denoris Searcy, and Ezekiel already missed out on Jamal Adams. 2.9 Bladder Cops. I see Travis Yenny drafting quarterback Deshaun Watson from Clemson here. Yenny only has 35-year-old Phillip Rivers and Brock Osweiler, who may or may not even be the starter in Cleveland. Travis Yenny needs to consider bye weeks and getting his quarterback of the future, not to mention having a plan in place if Rivers ever gets hurt. Watson is the most pro-ready of the rookie quarterback class and the one with the fastest route to being a starter. Watson is at his best when the lights are the brightest, and that is an important trait in a quarterback. Let's not forget that Houston is a playoff caliber team with bad quarterback play. Watson will have every opportunity to lead them into the playoffs. Watson is also a two-time Heisman candidate and won Clemson their first national championship in more than 30 years. He is a tremendous leader, and Yenny needs to pull the trigger now before quarterback-needy teams like the Poor Bastards and Gotham pick at 3-1 and 3.2 respectively. Captain Reg desperately needs to add a linebacker, but after watching Reuben Foster get taken by Howie, he decides to hold off again because 210 is a full round early for third linebacker Hassan Reddick. Instead, he opts to draft another running back here, and Carlos Hyde's handcuffed Joe Williams from Utah. This is a running back that was handpicked by Kyle Shanahan. Shanahan said, "I'm telling you right now, if we don't get him, I'll be sick." Williams ran a speedy 4.41 at the combine, and Shanahan knows how to get his speed backs in space. Look at the success that Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman have had. The Bulls need to double down at running back and decide to draft a handcuff to Ty Montgomery and running back Jamal Williams from BYU. Draft analyst Mark Dolgarian said, "Was there a more obvious mid-round pick at running back to anyone who's been hearing Daniel Jeremiah's James Starks comparisons? Jamal Williams brings the toughness and instincts between the tackles the Packers lacked in their run game last season." With the final pick in the second round that they acquired in a trade with the Crows for Blake Bortles, Howie's Hustlers selects wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster from USC. Once again, Howie has a talented guy who should have been selected at the end of the first or top of the second fall right into his lap. Howie honestly didn't expect to see Smith-Schuster here at 212 and doesn't need another wide receiver but can't pass on the value. Now, most of you know that my mock drafts are always 2 rounds. This time I'm adding a third lightning round. Here we go. 3-1, Poor Bastards, Mitchell Trubisky, quarterback from North Carolina. Greg gets his quarterback. 3.2, Gotham City Jokers, Marlon Mack, running back from South Florida, fills a team need. 3.3, Kyle Orton Drinking Buddies, linebacker Hassan Reddick from Temple, fills a team need. 3.4, Daddy Issues, Chris Godwin, wide receiver from Penn State, Tampa Bay wide receiver who Tampa Bay's head coach has compared to Roddy White. 3.5, Sandusky Victims, TJ Watt, linebacker from Wisconsin. If he's half as talented as JJ, this isn't a stretch. 3.6, Howie's Hustlers, wide receiver Carlos Henderson from Louisiana Tech. Howie loves his Broncos. 3.7, Das Raiderhawk, Cooper Kupp, wide receiver from Eastern Washington, PPR stud. 3.8, Gotham City Jokers from Ezekiel 2517, Solomon Thomas, defensive tackle from Stanford, fills a team need. 3.9, Bladder Cops, Gerald Everett, tight end from South Alabama, fills a team need. 3.10, Captain Reg, Raekwon McMillan, linebacker from Ohio State, finally gets his linebacker. 3.11, Bulls, James Conner, running back from Pittsburgh, handcuffed to Le'Veon Bell. 3.12, Crows, Kenny Galladay, wide receiver from Northern Illinois, fills a team need. Alright, well thank you for turning in to the 2017 Xtreme Dynasty mock draft. Hope you enjoyed, and happy drafting.